vehicle break down and you only have that one vehicle and no backup plan
and a passenger in the car,
girl, what's your plan?
I hope they got one.
If not, let's talk about one.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we want to give you some tips just in case you ever find that you are in a situation where whether you have a passenger in the vehicle and your vehicle break down, or you're headed to pick up a patient and your vehicle break down. What you gonna do? Have you thought about it?
You need to have some type of policy in place.
Yes.
You need to prepare yourself for any unexpected accident that can occur, whether it be the vehicle breaking down, tires blown out,
your driver call out that day and you have a dispatcher in the office and she know how to take calls, but do she know how to operate that vehicle? You can't that day as being an owner operator because you working doing something else on a special project, whatever the case may be. Like, all of that falls under having a policy and procedures in place in the event of these unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
Right?
So if you're starting with one vehicle, quite naturally, if something happens to that one vehicle while your driver is out and on the road, what are you going to do? You got to have that policy. So a part of that policy should be preparing for situations that could occur. So let's just say John is out, he has a member in the vehicle, your one vehicle, and the tires get blown out. How do you accommodate this client? And let's just say it's a wheelchair client.
Yes.
You don't have another van to go and retrieve your client from the vehicle. So what are you gonna do? So what are some options, Monica? All
right, so one option, we talk about this all the time, and that's building a supportive network within the NEMT community, right? So just say you have someone that also operate within the NEMT industry, another transportation provider. Call them up. Call Joe up. Joe, this just happened. Do you have an extra vehicle where you can come and rescue me? Like, can you pick up this client for me? Like, call Joe up. But before you do that, have a conversation with Joe beforehand, right? You want to go ahead and have that conversation with Joe. Joe, I'm only starting this industry with one vehicle. Just in case something happened, do you mind in the future if I give you a call if I need to? Like, you want to go ahead and have that conversation so Joe won't be caught off guard if you just call him out of the blue and be like, hey, can you come rescue me? You already had that conversation with Joe. You and Joe had already worked out some arrangements. Joe's okay with coming to your rescue because you've already spoken to him about that. So that's one thing you can do. Just make sure you build that supportive network within this space as well, because you never know who you may need.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, different mobility shops will allow you to rent vehicles. I don't know how much notice they need. I don't know if it's short notice, but that's definitely a conversation that you can have with your local mobility dealership. The wheelchair vans, I think they ran about $150, something like that a day. So, it can be a bit pricey, but you know what? If you have a vehicle that's broke down, at the end of the day, it's your fault, your problem, and not the client's. So you need to make sure that you take them, transport them safely back home. And
too, just what you mentioned with that, you want to have that rental dealership or mobility works already identified, already on saved in your phone, saved in your driver's phone. Like, everybody should know this that work for the company, right? So you want to make sure this is included in the policy. And so in that moment, you don't want to be scrambling like, who do I call? You already know, here's a list of places that I can call to see if I can rent a vehicle for today.
But the same as before, you want to have that conversation with them prior to you actually needing to rent that vehicle. You should be discussing how much is it going to cost you. Is there a minimum as far as the amount of time that you have to have the vehicle? is there any additional costs or hidden fees that come with renting the vehicle? But honestly, I think the most effective way is to just partner with another NEMT provider, and you guys just have each other back. Because like I said, building relationships is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
This industry is constantly changing, so to have a partner that, someone that you can speak
Yes.
NEMT to, like that language, is really important.
Yeah. And then not only that too, is one other thing I was thinking about. You want to also know who you're serving, right? Because, and what I mean by that is, even though you're transporting an individual that day that may be in a wheelchair, they may be transferable. So what if they can get out and transfer into a sedan? So you may have a sedan available, right? So you want to also keep that in mind, just in case that is a last resort you have to resort to. Like, if that person is transferable, if they can get out of the wheelchair for a moment just to transfer into a vehicle, that may be an option too that you can consider. If that person is transferable, if that person cannot transfer out of the wheelchair, don't force it. Don't try to make it happen. But just keep that in mind. Like, know the limits of your clients, know what they're capable of doing as well.
But then also preventative maintenance.
Ooh, girl.
You want to make sure that you're staying on top of that, making sure that you get your oil changes. While we go through a lot of oil changes, right? Oil changes, tire rotations, checking the tires to make sure the tires are still good on the vehicle, making sure the vehicle has all the fluids, coolant, water. All of that stuff is big too, because that's definitely going to, if you stay on top of your vehicle maintenance, I can guarantee you that you are going to set yourself up for just
you won't run into these issues. Pretty much. And then also too, when your drivers are doing this inspection checklist, when they're checking off, when they're going through these things that Jonathan just mentioned, when they're picking up the vehicle to go out that day, if they are doing it on a daily and consistent basis, they should notice any maintenance concerns that are coming up. And if they're documenting that information, you as the owner or whoever's in charge of that should make sure that you're looking to see, okay, John noted vehicle number 1, the thread on this tire, he can see the thread, or the engine light may be on the vehicle number 1. Like, if they're noting this stuff, you need to make sure you're pulling that vehicle to be serviced immediately. Don't wait. Go ahead and pull that vehicle and make sure that vehicle is being serviced.
Absolutely. But I think also in your protocol, it's important that you create the protocol and then you educate your drivers, your staff, management team on the protocol, because the last thing that you want to happen is for an emergency to happen and then everybody's scrambling, right? But it's like, why are you guys scrambling when we have this notebook right here that has the policies and procedures that will tell you exactly what to do in the case of an emergency? So definitely make sure that you're training them and going over that binder with the protocol in it with your staff. But you said another good one too, training your staff to be able to work all aspects of the business.
Yes. So you want to make sure that every single employee knows how to do all of the key job functions, right? So if your driver calls out that day, you have a dispatcher in the office, that's great. But can that dispatcher load and secure a wheelchair? Right? Is she trained or is he trained on doing that? And if not, they should be, because you never know when you may need them to jump and step into a role, and they need to be ready to do so. Same thing with your driver. You may have too many drivers for that day, right? Can that driver go in the office and take those calls and schedule those trips? And if not, you need to train that driver on how to do so that you are fully prepared across the board.
Absolutely. there are a lot of times where NEMT providers have full-time drivers just sitting around because it could be a lack of trips. Maybe you need to split that full-time position into 2 part-time positions, so that you can have extra staff members should an emergency happen. Because I think you definitely need to have part-time on call.
Yes.
Because it just works out a lot better.
I think those were really good tips, girl.
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of NEMT providers don't even think about having this type of policy in place.
But there are some states that require you to have a policy, a backup vehicle policy in place. And the reason I think they're implementing that now is because
something unhappened
in that state, and there may be clients that are consistently complaining, and they have to mandate that, put something in place where it is required for you to have a backup policy.
But why does it even have to be mandated? Like, for me, I think that's a no-brainer. If I only have one vehicle, I would be nervous.
Yes,
I would be nervous.
I would make sure I treat that baby special. I would be nervous too, because you just never know what what's gonna happen. But yeah, I think that's why it's been mandated, because these things are happening and they're not thinking about it ahead of time, and so they're scrambling like, we're stuck. So what are you gonna do if you don't have a policy in place? You're gonna call the broker? How is that gonna look?
Oh girl, they gonna stop sending trips.
But we just being real. Like, how would that look? So
they gonna be mad. They gonna stop sending trips. Because honestly, other let me just lay out this scenario, okay? You have one vehicle, and maybe that's why some brokers require you to have 2 and 3 vehicles because of stuff like this.
Yes.
But let me tell you, because we done did a whole lot of rescue calls, right? So the transportation company calls the broker, says the vehicle broke down.
Yep.
The broker's dispatcher's probably gonna be pissed. Like, oh my God, trust me, you're gonna be the topic of the whole office.
And they're gonna have to pay another TP, extra money,
to go and rescue that client.
Yes.
But the issue is, for a one-way trip, another transportation provider probably ain't gonna want to go and do that one trip. So that means that member's probably gonna be sitting in that vehicle for a long period of time until the broker is able to find someone to go and take on that rescue call.
Yes. Yep. And that's the reason why I think they are putting this policy in place, because as a business owner, they're not being proactive and making sure that they have the policy in place already.
And maybe that's why they do that whole 10-year minimum as well, because they know that the older the vehicle, the more problems
you will experience
are going to arise.
Yeah,
y'all. So definitely.
So we done broke it down and figured it out then.
Girl, y'all need to go ahead and start working on that policy, because it is important that you have that in place. And like I said, train your staff. Let them know where the policies. Matter of fact, put all the policies in one book, right?
Yes.
Put them all in one book so people aren't scrambling around in case of an emergency. But Monica, this was a good topic, girl. I'm glad you thought of this one.
It was a good topic. See, I know I got y'all. Remember, MJ taught you. All right, guys.
Take care.
Bye.